afternoon and welcome to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. A big special welcome to those of you who are listening right now to the podcast version. If you're just now tuning in for the first time, you can catch up with us on your commute home now because Border Report Live is bringing you real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border in audio form. You can listen now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the all-new, all-free iHeartRadio app. We got a jam-packed show today. Our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendez, has got a whole host of different topics to get to a little later in the program. And we're also going to hear from ValleyCentral.com reporter here in Harlingen, Texas, Jorge Vela, who's been covering a pretty big trial this week, the trial of one of the very first executed ICE raids here in the Rio Grande Valley that which the jury just came to a decision on yesterday. So we're going to tell you all about that. Jorge's going to have all the key insights as he sat through the trial for the last few days. So we're looking forward to that. But first up, we wanted to show you this. It's a tweet on the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who said in the tweet, in less than 200 days, 1.6 million illegal immigrants have left the United States population. This is massive. This means safer streets, taxpayer savings, pressure off of schools and hospital services, and better job opportunities for America. Thank you, POTUS Trump. POTUS, if you didn't know, is the acronym for President of the United States. Now, most of the responses to the Secretary's posts have been supportive of those comments. Also happening, what we were just talking about, the owners of a popular bakery in South Texas have been convicted of 2 counts of harboring illegal aliens and the conspiracy to do so. Now, this case is likely the one with the most high profile at the moment in regard to the string of ICE raids that have been happening in this region. Now, the bakery was actually raided back in February, but during the 3-day trial, testimony showed agents had been investigating the owners since last December. Leonardo Baez and his wife, Alicia Avila-Guel, both legal permanent residents, have owned the bakery since 2012. When it was raided, agents say they found 8 bakery employees who were undocumented immigrants and that they were living in a small apartment next door. And now it's time to bring in KVEO reporter Jorge Vela, who's been covering this trial, and he joins us now to talk about testimony. Hey, Jorge.
No, definitely. This was a fascinating case. I believe day 2 was the main pivot of this case. That day we heard from Dylan Duke. He's the Homeland Security investigator who started the investigation. He said how he started this was with a December 19, 2024 tip where they said there were several people in that house that there were stashed, including minors. It turns out after the investigation, there were no minors inside, but he did start investigating, doing private work, checking out the facility since that day. And then on December 31st, he even saw how some people were cooking a carne asada or barbecue outside of that place, which was all fascinating as he collected all this evidence. Then in February, he said they went in February 14, they went in, they talked to the people there, they asked for information, and that's when they went to the apartment adjacent to that bakery. And they actually even talk about how everybody was cooperative. All the people inside there, the owners got there like 20 to 30 minutes after the agents were there, and they didn't even have a key to go inside, so they had to ask the people living in those quarters to give them the access to that. And so that was a pivotal part of the case. The defense did try to prove that the people were cooperative. There was no altercations there, which Agent Duke did provide that information. That was true. However, the 2 testimonies after that, the 2 witnesses provided by the prosecution were Gerardo Emanuel Sanchez Martinez, who was one of the undocumented workers who was caught at that time. He was a baker from Mexico. He came from Ciudad Victoria. He had been baking for 16 years. But and the defense did prove that he did come by his own. There was no conspiracy to bring him by part of the bakery owners. However, when he did get here to the United States after arriving through Matamoros, there was information he got that there was a seasonal baking job. And remember, this was back in November, December. And like he said, a bakery in the United States, he didn't know where Los Fresnos was. He didn't know about Abby's Bakery, was looking for seasonal bakers. And that's when somebody told him about this job. He went to Los Fresnos. He asked the owner, which was Leonardo Baez, for the job, and he was immediately offered the job. And he was told at the same time he could stay to the adjacent apartment where there was about 5 to 6 people living during most of the time. So he started working there since November. He stayed there through December and everything. But some information that the prosecution did point out was that the conditions were, the cleaning was done by those people living there, but there was no fire extinguisher. There was also no hot water. That was really interesting. That's something the prosecution really tried to put out there, that their conditions were not that good. And he was never asked for any documents or anything by Mr. Baez. He did provide that in testimony, Mr. Martinez. Now, the second witness, the other undocumented worker, who was Roberto Ibarra Otero, now he did provide much more testimony. Both of these testimonies, by the way, were like 2 hours and a half of pre-recorded testimony. So it was pretty long. But Mr. Otero did say he did work at that bakery while he had a tourist visa years before this. He had been working there since 2015, 2016. So that was really, really remarkable. However, he did get deported as he didn't have the COVID vaccine in 2021. And in 2022, he decided to come to the United States illegally. And that's when that was actually one of the most defining moments, as the prosecution asked, then why did you return to Abby's Bakery? And he was like, once I did cross, once I was at this home where the people were there stashed, he said, I called Mr. Baez and he picked me up. I think that was a definitely defining moment in the case. And then on the third day, we were supposed to hear from the son of the bakery owners, but the defense rested and it immediately went into deliberations. And in less than 4 hours, the jury came out with a verdict. And the family did not look that shook when the verdict was decided. However, the attorneys did, especially the attorney for Mr. Leonardo Baez, Mr. Villarreal. And let's see a little bit of what he said right after the verdict.
They were grateful. They hugged me, and we will continue fighting, see what options they have. It sets an example for the rest of the community, and as to the consequences that your everyday actions can have with the people that are closest to you.
As you can see there, he was pretty shaken up right after the verdict. He said he felt like all his work and everything they tried to prove, as he said, we were just trying to prove a reasonable doubt, whatever the prosecution, the government was trying to prove. He said he was shaken up. He didn't feel good after that verdict. And also, he provided some insight as to how they always wanted to prove that they were just offering mere shelter and not harboring, especially as they tried to prove to the prosecution that they never forced people to stay there. Mm-hmm. The people were just living there because they wanted to save money and stuff like that.
You know, it's pretty interesting that you bring that up, because earlier this week when we were talking about landlord-tenant rights, when the tenant happens to be an undocumented migrant, one of the things that you had mentioned that can really, bring the hammer down on the landlord is, let's say I'm a undocumented individual and I come to you, my landlord, and say, hey, I can't make rent this month. Can I do some odd jobs around the house or, around some of your other properties? And that kind of, that would get a landlord in trouble, agreeing to that, even with the individual coming to them and offering that. So it's very interesting to see that parallel here in a non-housing situation, but, in an actual prosecution.
Exactly, Rudy. And I mean, that's what the prosecution said. I mean, they were living there rent-free. This wasn't a normal tenant-landlord relationship. And also even Mr. Sanchez Martinez, one of the undocumented workers, he said he even cut grass for Mr. Baez a couple of times. So there you see those odd jobs in that gray area, mm-hmm. that they sort of speak. And one of the other attorneys, the attorney for Miss Alicia Avila-Guel, he also spoke about how he felt after the trial, and also discussed how he believed this sets a precedent for the future.
I'm extremely saddened. I think this was a test case, not just for the Valley, but for the country. And like I told the jury, we don't disagree with these laws. We think that these are good laws, but we don't believe that there was harboring in this case. We believe that these were hardworking people, and they employed hardworking employees, and they were just here to make a better living. And I believe that these laws were supposed to target international criminal organizations, stash houses, human trafficking, not bakers who are just trying to make a living and trying to help out friends and family.
And again, we go back to that point where they wanted to prove mere shelter, that they were never forced. I mean, the defense did always bring up that these workers on their days off would go to the local Walmart, downtown Brownsville, and just be by themselves. They didn't have to stay there, or they were not hiding, as this bakery is right in the highway in Los Fresnos. So that was a main point. But the prosecution said, I mean, they did provide rent, food, and stuff like that, all for mere financial gain. And I believe that was an argument that the jurors and had it for the verdict.
I find it interesting, too, that the attorney for Ms. Avila-Guel, he's not arguing that the laws are wrong. He just thinks it's an incorrect application of the law.
Exactly. He was talking about the definition of harboring. That's one of the main things they tried to convince the jury of, that Congress leaves that definition open to public, open for juries to decide. And he said at harboring is when you hide people, when you conceal them, when you try to take them off from public view. But due to the fact that this apartment only had one entrance, which was the front entrance from the bakery to that apartment, he said there was no way these people were trying to hide these people, as it was just public view. And he also said the thing about the barbecues, that people were there all the time. And that was definitely one of the chief arguments they tried to prove, but were unsuccessful.
Really quick, before we get into some more questions, I just wanted to ask you, do we know what's happening with the two individuals that provided that video testimony?
Yes, they signed an agreement that they stayed in custody for 45 days. After those 45 days, they would be deported back to Mexico, but there would be no criminal charges against them.
And I don't know if you know this, but does that mean they have a chance to actually, apply for some kind of residency? I would assume so, since there was no actual criminal charges.
I actually did text an attorney yesterday to ask this very question, and he said there's the chance, due to the fact that there's no criminal record when it comes to them. The gentleman Otero, who was deported because of not having a COVID vaccine, I mean, he was not deported because he was working here. So yeah, I believe both have that chance.
All right. And lastly, just one more question. Do we know whether or not those owners are going to stay in custody, or what happened after the verdict?
Right after the verdict, the prosecutors did ask the judge to take them into custody immediately. That did happen right there. However, the judge, right now they're out on bond. The judge did say to the government that he objected. He didn't believe that was necessary, and did tell Baez and Avila-Guel as they approached the bench that they could stay out on bond as they were sentencing, and they're going to have meetings every 3 to 2 weeks with probation officers as they wait sentencing on November 18th.
And do we know what the deal is with the bakery itself?
From what it was heard there, the son is right now managing the bakery. He was going to testify on the third day, but he did not. He wasn't called by the defense. He is going to continue managing that bakery.
I know I said last question a few questions ago, but one more, because I thought it was really interesting. You said the son was supposed to provide testimony for the defense. Did the defense call in any witnesses whatsoever?
None at all.
So it was just a really quick wrap. I mean, how long was their part of the case, do you think? It was just a morning, right?
Their part of the case was actually, I would say, about 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
It just, they brought in the jury. They sat down. They just said, hey, is the defense ready to begin their case? And both attorneys for Baez and Avila-Guel said, we rest.
Interesting. No wonder that, and not much to deliberate on for those jurors. It only took a couple hours to bring back those guilty verdicts. Well, thank you so much for your reporting on this, Jorge. We appreciate it. And I think we're going to talk to you again next week about some stuff that you're currently working on. So we'll check back in with you next week. Thanks again. But stay at home, or you at home rather, stay with us, because after the break, we're going to bring in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendez, to talk about a lot of things, including some new travel advisories to Mexico. Stick around. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. Welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles. I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas. Don't forget, you can now catch up and stay informed on the story shaping the U.S.-Mexico border, as we now bring you real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border in audio podcast form. You can listen now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the all-new iHeartRadio app. Time now to bring in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendez. Julian, you've got a ton to talk about today, specifically an interesting story regarding some drones around Mexico City. Fill us in.
Really good to be back in the show today. Yeah, it has to do with the recent transfer or expulsion of 26 cartel leaders from Mexico. This happened this week, and it was a follow up to what happened a few months ago, in which 29 cartel leaders were also sent to the U.S. from Mexico. So out of this conversation stemmed an interesting factoid that the Mexican press immediately seized on, and that is that according to Mexico City news media, there have been American drones or aircraft seen hovering around the Mexico City area. So Mr. Omar Garcia Harfuch, whom you see on your screen, Mexico's public safety secretary, spoke to that very recently, and he did confirm that American government drones are assisting Mexican authorities in specific investigations. He did confirm that the drones were flying in an area about 40 miles west of Mexico City. Obviously, there were some questions about why is Mexico allowing this, and he emphasized that, hey, this doesn't have to do with Mexican sovereignty. It is being respected. They are here because we asked for them. But still, many questions are surfacing regarding just how far the U.S. is pushing Mexico when it comes to cooperation in law enforcement, in the capture and extradition of cartel leaders. Among the 26, the group of 26 that was transferred this week, we have a gang leader for the Jalisco cartel who was allegedly in charge of bringing in cocaine from South America. And as we have reported in the past 2 years, some South American countries have had a bumper crop of coca leaf, which leads to cocaine. And that's the reason why, in the past year, especially in the US, we have seen an increase in seizures of cocaine. So that's one of the leaders that was extradited. Here we see some footage from the Mexican government about the extradition, which they are calling expulsion, not extradition. And that's an interesting point. And it leads me to this. A lot of these alleged criminals had court orders against their extraditions. They had stays from Mexican courts. And what the public safety secretary says is that that's kind of like a maneuver, and it's something very dangerous that led to the expulsions. And the expulsions, as opposed to extraditions, mean these people are too dangerous. We cannot hold them in our jails. It's in the interest of Mexico, and it is in the interest of the U.S. that if the U.S. wants them, if the U.S. Also plans to prosecute them, let's send them over there where they will be guaranteed to be prosecuted and possibly be sentenced. Now, specifically, Mr. Garcia Harfuch said that these 26 alleged criminals were running their operations from jail. All of them were incarcerated, but never mind that. According to him, they were still ordering kidnappings, extortion. They were ordering murders, and of course, they were still engaged in either migrant smuggling, migrant extortion and kidnapping, or drug trafficking. And they were organizing it all from the jails. So that's how he justifies the expulsions that took place this week.
Now, Julian, I know you said there was some concern with those drones flying over about, the sovereignty of Mexico and its laws and its people. Are there any concerns on the side of these so-called expulsions, right? They're changing it from extradition to expulsion to kind of, get around their laws. Is there any concern about doing that for folks?
Really, it's no secret that the Mexican government is being forced to tiptoe not only around its own laws, but around its politics as well. Mexicans in general are very nationalistic. They are very proud of not being the U.S. Um, and with the Trump administration pushing the Mexican government so hard, they're obligated on the one hand to kind of produce results to show that they are really on their own, trying to fight the drug cartels, trying to improve public safety, trying to guarantee that will no longer be corruption. And on the other hand, they have to justify to their public, hey, we are doing this on our own. We are not being submissive to the U.S. The President Claudia Sheinbaum, has said it herself: cooperation, not subjugation or submission.
No, actually, I think it's interesting because I think one of the last times, not this most recent time, but a couple weeks ago, we actually talked about something where the U.S. was taking some of these people that were expelled from Mexico and negotiating plea deals with them. And I believe President Scheinbaum actually used the words negotiating with terrorists at that one point. Has there been any word if there's going to be any concern that these people might not face the justice that the Mexican government hopes that these individuals will see?
As a matter of fact, the Public Safety Secretary addressed the topic briefly. He did concede, and this is something that a message that has been kind of like there's been a mixed message from the presidency.
Hmm.
But the Public Safety Secretary did concede that there was an agreement before sending the 29 back in February, I believe, and the 26 this week, that they would not be facing the death penalty.
Hmm.
And the last time that we spoke, there were serious concerns. Well, why did the U.S. government decide not to seek the death penalty? Is it because they're cooperating? Is it because they're giving them information that they're going to be using, perhaps even against Mexican officials? And this brings some clarity that was negotiated beforehand. But yeah, like I said, and I want to make it clear, Mexico is tiptoeing a very fine line as far as convincing the U.S. that it is cooperating, and as far as telling its citizens, hey, we're just following our own laws and trying to make you safer.
Hmm. All right. And you know, I've been hearing also that you've got some reporting on some new travel advisories for folks traveling into Mexico. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, really. Let's move on to an entirely different topic. The U.S. State Department every so often puts out travel advisories on every country, and this week they updated their travel advisory for Mexico, and there were some surprises that involve you guys out there in the Rio Grande Valley as
Hmm.
well. Have a copy of the advisory, and it's pretty much telling people to not go to several states, including the border state of Tamaulipas. Tamaulipas and its cities of Nuevo Laredo, Reynosa, and Matamoros border some of your biggest cities down there,
Yes,
including
sir.
Brownsville, including Laredo, and Hidalgo County,
Hmm.
where McAllen is. So that was kind of surprising. And what I am hearing today from the Mexican establishment is that this was kind of unwarranted, that it's going to have grave repercussions to their commerce, and that in a way it is exaggerated because they claim that every day thousands of people cross the international bridges back and forth, and nothing really happens to them. They tell me, especially those that have businesses or that are well-to-do, that their neighborhoods are safer than neighborhoods in big cities in the U.S., such as Chicago or New York. But the reality is that the State Department is citing some very real concerns. In
Hmm.
Tamaulipas, specifically, the drug war between the remnants of the Zetas, which now are called the Northeast Cartel, and some of the gangs associated with the old Gulf Cartel. Further, the State Department says that in many of these shootouts and in many of these activities of cartel on cartel, third parties, innocent civilians, either get hurt or have their property vandalized. There have been cases in which streets or avenues, highways have been blocked off by one faction or another. And then all of a sudden they start getting people out of their cars and torching them. And specifically, the State Department is citing that in Tamaulipas, in the cities that I mentioned in Tamaulipas, there have been confirmed reports of armed people, armed criminals, patrolling. That's the way they use patrolling the streets of Tamaulipas, which means that they believe that they present themselves as having the control of those portions of Tamaulipas, not the government.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting today, Julian. Our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendez, joining us. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to Border Report Live. As you know, from immigration to trade, security to culture, here at Border Report Live, we deep dive into the issues impacting life all along the U.S.-Mexican border. But now you can join us on your commute, in the gym, wherever or whenever you may be available for those expert interviews, on-the-ground reporting, and the latest developments that you're not going to hear about the U.S.-Mexico border anywhere else. You can subscribe to Border Report Live now in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the iHeartRadio app, so you can stay connected to the border 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Also, don't forget, we want you to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. It's a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. You can find more on Political Power Ranker at abc27.com or your local Nexstar station's website. That is going to do it for us today. For Julian Resendes in El Paso, Jorge Vela here in Harlingen, my name is Rudy Mireles. See you tomorrow.